Welcome to MS unMasked, Our Journey and Beyond, a podcast where hosts Justine Martin and Allyson Brown share their personal experiences, insights and practical advice on navigating life with multiple sclerosis. Each week they delve into topics such as self-care, nutrition, exercise, sleep and symptom management. Join them as they explore the physical, emotional and mental aspects of living with MS, providing a supportive community for listeners touched by this condition. Get ready to be inspired and empowered on this incredible journey through MS unMasked, Our Journey and Beyond.
Welcome to the MS unMasked, Our Journey and Beyond. This podcast, we will dive into the daily lives of two extraordinary individuals navigating the challenges and triumphs of multiple sclerosis. I'm your host, Justine Martin.
And I'm Allyson Brown. We're both here living with MS and we're here to share our stories, experiences, our insights, and create a supportive community for everyone touched by this condition.
Each week, we'll open up about our personal journeys with MS, discussing how it has shaped our lives, impacted our relationships, and influenced our perspectives. We believe in the power of connection and understanding, and we hope that this podcast becomes a safe place for you listeners to find comfort, inspiration, and practical advice.
Absolutely, Justine. We'll be delving into various aspects of life with MS, covering topics like self-care, nutrition, exercise, sleep, and daily management of symptoms. So our aim is to provide a holistic view of living with MS, exploring the physical, emotional, and mental dimensions of the condition.
That's right, Allyson. And through our conversations, we're hoping to shed light on different ways MS affects individuals and emphasise that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. We'll share our own experiences and the strategies we've discovered along the way, but we'll also want to hear from you, our incredible listeners. Your questions, stories, and insights will shape the future episodes of this podcast.
Absolutely. So together we'll explore the power of self-care practices, discuss the role of nutrition and exercise in managing MS symptoms, and provide practical tips of enhancing sleep symptoms that accompany MS and share how we've learnt to cope with them in our everyday lives.
And let's not forget the emotional aspect of living with MS. We'll talk about the roller coaster of emotions and offer guidance on maintaining mental well-being. Additionally, we'll touch on alternate therapies and resources that have proven beneficial to us personally and others in the MS community.
Yeah, so living with MS doesn't mean giving up on our dreams and our passions. We'll explore how we've adapted and pursued our goals despite these challenges, providing encouragement, inspiration for other people facing these circumstances.
We're excited to embark on this journey with you listeners, exploring the ups and downs, celebrating the victories, and offering support during the tougher times. We hope you'll join us for each episode as we navigate life with MS, learn from each other, and build a strong, resilient community together.
Absolutely. I'm excited. So let's get started. Welcome unMasked, Our Journey and Beyond.
Hi, Allyson. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Justine. How are you?
Yeah, good. Now, listeners, this is our first podcast, so you're going to have to bear with us a little bit because we're still finding our feet, aren't we, Al?
We are, but welcome, everybody. Welcome to MS unMasked. We're excited to be able to have a chat about our experience with MS and, our journeys, and hopefully we'll give some insights and some tips about how we're coping and how we can help each others to actually feel better.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Allyson doesn't know that I'm going to ask this question, but I thought it would be important to actually mention how we met. And because, we are part of the MS community, but we actually met in the bigger, wider world.
We did. We actually got introduced through my wedding photographer, actually.
Oh, was he? I didn't know he was your wedding photographer.
Yeah, that's how we met, was that he did our wedding photography and then he did my business photography and stuff like that as well. But, he connected us, and that's kind of through a Geelong business networking area that we're both involved in. So, yeah, it's kind of a
that's
small
right.
world,
So
I suppose. But
we met at the
nice
Geelong Chamber of Commerce.
Got to meet and, share our journeys together and help other people.
Yeah, it's been an exciting, it's about 6 months now, isn't it, Allyson?
Yeah, probably about that, I reckon.
And we're working on a couple of big projects together. So we've got World MS Day coming up on Tuesday, the 30th of May.
It's exciting. And obviously for anybody that's going to register for our event, it's going to be about 5 tips, our top tips basically for living well with MS. And for those people that are listening that are maybe in the US or Canada, it'll be actually on your 29th of May rather than the 30th. So it's the 30th for us here in Australia, but it will actually be the 29th for you guys. So yeah, check out the details for that because it'll be a really cool event. Lots of free giveaways.
And we're going to put all the details in the link in the bio, but you'll be able to go on either my websites or Alyson's website and see the try booking link. If you can't attend and you still would like a recording of it, please register for that webinar, and we will at the end be sending everyone out a copy of it. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And what else are we working on together besides now this podcast and World MS Day? We've got another project that we're working on. Elle, do you want to tell the listeners about that one too?
I think you explain it better because you're sort of the founder of it. But we are doing an MS Stories book of people from Australia that have been diagnosed with MS, all different types of MS. And yeah, it's all about different stories. So there's like 25 people, I think you said, Justine.
Yeah, there's close to 25. So it's an anthology, and it'll be available from September 2023 on all major book-selling platforms. So hop on Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon. Our websites as well will have it available for purchase. And
Kindle, you said that it might be available as a Kindle.
That's right. Yeah, so Kindle and Audible, it'll eventually get onto those as well. So we're excited about that. So today we thought we'd talk about when we were first diagnosed. Now, we all have a different diagnosis story. I mean, we're all linked by that common thread of having MS. But when we're diagnosed, they're very similar, but they're also very different. So, Allyson, do you want to share about when were you diagnosed?
Yeah, so it's one of those things, and I know that you spoke about your journey last night at an event that we were both at, and I remembered specifically that you said your specific date of diagnosis because you don't
and the time.
You don't forget that date, right? So it was the 19th of July 2005 for me. I was in the second year of my PhD research. And what kind of happened, the symptom that led me to actually lead to the diagnosis was my right leg. I was running up some stairs. My right leg just dropped out from under me. And I was like, oh my God, how clumsy am I? Anyway, I'd kind of jarred my knee a little bit. So I was seeing a physio to get some work done on it. And during the course of a few weeks, I said to my physio, I'm like, oh, I'm getting this sort of numb patch in the middle of my back. Must be pinching a nerve or something. And she goes, it's not really that normal. You should probably go see your doctor. So I did. And the doctor, by that stage, it was a couple of weeks that went by. By that stage, I had numbing right down from my breast on the right side, right down my right side of my body. My leg was getting stiff and weak. And anyway, the doctor did a bit of a test on my toes. I remember this specifically. She got my big toe and she's like, right, I'm going to point it upwards or put it in the middle or point it downwards. And you got to tell me which direction that I'm pointing without looking. And I was like, oh yeah, that's easy. And anyway, she must have done it. She goes, oh, so which way am I pointing? And I was like, oh my God, I can't feel what she just did. So I guessed because I was like, oh, maybe it's up. And she goes, okay, well, we'll try again. And I was like, oh my God, that means that I got it wrong. So she did it 3 times. She's like, I'm going to send you to a neurologist because I'm not really comfortable with what I'm just seeing. So I went to the neurologist and he's like, yeah, let's get some MRIs done of your brain and spine. And lo and behold, I get a diagnosis with relapsing remitting MS.
Just to butt in there about, you said, oh, well, I'll just thinking to myself, oh, I'll just guess. How many other people have done that and have guessed right, but they've actually, by lying, and not picking on you there, Elle, but just to make a point, that by lying their way through that medical test, have actually caused more long-term harm to themselves, because that may have slowed down the process of being diagnosed for something.
Yeah,
So I think it's really
absolutely.
important to say what's going on with your body, and also really important to say that if you're not liking what the medical profession is saying, and I'm not bagging out the medical profession at all, but I've been misdiagnosed with something else, and if I listened to that doctor, I would not be walking on this planet today. So no one knows our bodies better than what we actually do, and I think that's important to think of. And we here in Australia live in such a fortunate country that if we want a second opinion or third or fourth opinion, we can shop around for a different doctor and go to, and it is within our rights to do that. So just wanted to jump in there and say that. But
So true,
carry
though.
on.
No, it's so true. It's one of those things where you could easily just get misdiagnosed, or just ignore these symptoms that are actually causing a bit of trouble. Like, I thought it was just a pinched nerve. I wasn't really that worried about it. Fair enough, if I had waited the 2 weeks till I got to the doctor and my whole right side was actually numb, then I might have been like, all right, I think something else is going on. But I think it's one of those things when you get a diagnosis. So my diagnosis story was a bit funny. Like, when I was diagnosed, before I got diagnosed, I went into the MRI, and back in those days, you had to wait for a printout of the sort of scan, right? So I was like at the reception desk waiting for this printout, and there's this guy that comes in, bumbling in with his briefcase in his hand, and he's like, "Where's Allyson Brown? Where's Allyson Brown?" And I was like,
"Oh my
"What the
God."
hell?" And I kind of just stood there and went, "Yeah, okay, that's me. Hi." And he goes, "We need to get you started on treatment straight away." And I was like, "Dude, I have just walked out of the MRI. I don't know what to say." And so I said to him, "Right, well, clearly you found something, but I don't know anything. I literally just walked out here." And he was like, oh, they didn't tell you? Oh, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to tell you. So we're going to have to go back to your neurologist so that he can explain it. And I was like, holy shit.
What the hell?
Well, all I kept thinking was urgent treatment equals a terminal diagnosis. That's it. I've got days or weeks to live. That's all I could think of, right?
Well, you would. If someone turned around and said that to you, that would be the first thing that I'd go through my mind.
Yeah. And so I was
nowadays I'd be straight on telehealth looking on, and not telehealth, what is it, my health record, because you can access a lot of the time my health record before you even get into your doctors. So there you go. There's a bit of a tip for people.
Bit of a tip, yeah. Yeah, and that's it. And so it was a really long walk back to that neurologist office where I had to wait in the waiting room, and all I'm thinking is like the worst case scenario. Anyway, when he said you've got MS, I was like, oh, I felt relieved. And I actually said to him, thank goodness. And he goes, you do understand that MS is a serious lifelong illness, and you'll be on medication for the rest of your life and probably be in a wheelchair in 20 years or so. And I was like, yeah, but at least I'm not going to die right away, because that's what I thought was going to happen. So it kind of was weird. I feel like I went through a fair bit of, I don't know if you'd call it denial. I suppose it sort of was in a way, but I just had that relief that I knew something wasn't right with my body. And now I had an answer. Now I had a reason that I could be like, oh, so I'm not just going crazy. Because I reckon, did you feel like you're going crazy?
Yeah, and the hardest part of having MS is waiting to be diagnosed with MS or any disease. I've had cancer and everything like that. I hate waiting for the diagnosis. It's like, just fucking diagnose me with something. Give me that tag. Then I can get my head around it, and then we can start treatment, whatever the treatment may be. But to sit and wait, and that there's something wrong with your body, and you feel that the medical professionals aren't listening to you, or it's taking so long, because it never happens fast, ever. It doesn't happen like on TV. It doesn't happen like the movies, and that shits me. Why can't it happen that fast? Why can't we start treatment that very instant with it? So totally get it, Allyson, totally.
I know. And did you have a similar experience with your diagnosis?
Well, my diagnosis was a little bit different, actually. Similar, but same but different, as we keep saying. And I've actually written a book about same but different. I went to the doctors in about August 2010. I was running for the federal election and was under quite a lot of stress living in WA. And I'd had in the January of 2010 my belly button pierced. So I had an infected belly button piercing which just wouldn't heal. And then at the same time, my vision went blurry. So it was like someone had smeared Vaseline across my eyes. So, when you wear glasses and you get fingerprints all over them and they get to the point where you can't see very well out of them. And people say, how do you see through those lenses? Look at the crap that's on them. Well, that's what I was like all the time, except for it'd be there for maybe 10 minutes and then it'd go again. Or it might be there for 5 hours and then it'd go again. I'd wake up and I'd be perfectly clear and then within half an hour I'd be blurry. Oh, it could be clear all day and then it'd hit me. So it was really frustrating because I couldn't read, I couldn't watch TV, and it was happening at times when I was driving, and that was very scary. Now, so that was in August 2010. Now, I'd had similar vision disturbances back in 2001. 2002, and I put it down at the time to me wearing mascara and eyeliner, and maybe I was having an allergic reaction to them. This time round I wasn't wearing any mascara or eyeliner and it was still happening. So I went to the doctors for the infected belly bar piercing, which did clear up, by the way, and I still have that. And I just mentioned to him my vision was blurry, and about 2 years, 18 months prior to that, I suppose it would have been, it was about 2008, I'd had an MRI because there was something that was happening with my face, and my face would feel funny, and when I went to eat something, I'd have all this pain throughout my face. And I got diagnosed back then with myofascial pain syndrome, which I think they misdiagnosed me then. Yeah. But I had an MRI, and the MRI didn't show any nice white glowing bits, what happens with MS in your brain, so like the Christmas lights in there. But it did show a cyst behind my right eye, which is quite common apparently, and it's something that we're actually born with. A lot of us are born with these cysts. So at the time I was told not to worry about it, and I didn't. So here I was then sitting in my GP, and I had a very good GP at the time. And he said to me, you've never had that cyst looked at, have you? And I went, well, no, my ears, nose and throat specialist told me not to worry about it. So he wasn't actually specialised in the brain. He was just specialised in ears, nose and throat. And within 24 hours.
Listen to them, right? As soon as a specialist tells you something, you're like, oh my God, well, that must be factual, right? Yeah. There's no chance they could be wrong.
No. So within 24 hours, they'd got me into a neurosurgeon's office. Now, that petrified the absolute crap out of me, thinking, oh my God, I've got to have brain surgery to get this cyst has gone malignant and I've got brain cancer. So again, the worst scenarios go through your brain or through your mind at the time. Yeah. But then when I went in there, I asked him, do you think that this could be MS? And he just looked at me and I said, my mum's got MS. Well, she had MS. She passed away at the age of 49 from complications from it. Here I was, 39 years old, was always told that I would never get MS, that it wasn't hereditary and there was no chance that I was ever going to get it. So my brother and I never worried about getting it, or even, if there were symptoms there for at least 20, if not even further back into my teenage years when I stop and think about things.
Me too.
That I ignored. Well, I don't even want to say ignored. I didn't give it a second consideration that it could be MS because we were told that we weren't going to get it. And he said, oh, no, I think it's more your migraines, because I've been a hemiplegic migraine sufferer since I was 15. And I'm like, well, why don't I have any pain then? Because if you've ever had a migraine, you'll know that there's that excruciating pain and light sensitivity and everything. And I wasn't having any of that. So he then sent me off to an ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist confirmed that there was nothing wrong with my vision when it was working. So I had 20/20 vision when it was switched on. He couldn't actually explain either why it was going like that, but he said, oh, maybe you're having cluster headaches. And I'm like, well, if I'm having cluster headaches, wouldn't I have some form of pain?
You have a headache?
Yeah, a headache. And I didn't have a headache. Like they thought that I should have been having headaches. And it's like, well, don't give me symptoms that I'm not actually having. And it's like, why aren't they listening to me? So then I went back to the neurosurgeon. He went, I think we're going to have to do an MRI, sent me off for an MRI, and it came back. And it was like you said, we used to get the old films. Now, I was quite adverse to looking at those films because of my mum and her MS. And so I looked at it and I saw white spots. You could see the white spots on there. And I read the report. Now, the report didn't actually say you have MS or anything like that, because they very rarely will say that. But they'll say about the demyelination of the nerves and everything. And I remember reading the letter. We were driving home from having the MRI and just bursting into tears and saying to my fiance at the time, I think I've got MS. And he's like, no, you don't. No, don't be silly. You're just overthinking it. And I knew from that moment on that that's what it was. Anyway, I had to go back to the neurosurgeon and he's like, well, I can't help you. You're going to have to go see a neurologist. And I'm like, oh, my God, just someone tell me what it is. So I went back. Then a week later, I was sitting in the neuro's office. Now, the first question, do you think I've got MS? No, I think it's your migraines. Let's put you on migraine pills for 3 months and see if it makes a difference. So he put me on Topamax, I think it was, from memory, and did 3 months of it, and things just kept getting worse. My left arm started to go funny. My face went numb. Cognitively, I couldn't count at all anymore. That was all gone. And when you're in a job where you need to multitask and give change and count the float and everything, I couldn't do it anymore.
Kind of important.
Yeah. So then from there, I went back to him in the January 2011. And he goes, look, you're going to have another MRI, because I'd had all these other symptoms come up. And he said, I'm going away for 3 weeks. Do it when I come back. And I'm like, oh, well, excuse me, you get to go on holidays. My body's deteriorating at a rapid rate. But, hey, let's not do it till you come back from your goddamn holidays. Anyway, I was very angry back then, and it still makes me angry that, we're just treated as a number and someone that just walks in the door, and they don't realize that we have these lives outside. And my son was joining the army, and he was going away, enlisting on the 28th of February. I thought, if I have this MRI before he goes away, I know that it's going to come back that I've got MS, and he's not going to want to enlist. So I held off. Another month. And I went in and had the MRI, I think from memory, the day after, or it must have been the day after he left. And went and had that done and got the results back, which my girlfriend picked up from the hospital for me. And it was my 40th birthday party. I remember opening them up and looking and going, fuck, there's more white spots. I'm glowing more.
Is that like happy birthday?
Yeah, but the report wasn't in it. They didn't put the report in. But I can remember standing at the window with the one that I'd had done like 3-4 months earlier, and the new one going, oh my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Anyway, I then had to wait till the 14th of March at 8:30 a.m. in the morning, and my partner was away. Kel was away in the mines working. All my family were on this side of the country, so on the eastern seaboard, and here I was in Western Australia by myself. Zach had gone off to the army, and Allie was 13 years old.
Gotta feel pretty isolating, pretty lonely.
Very lonely, very scary. And my girlfriend Flick, who worked at the hospital where my neuro was, she came in with me. And we sat there and I watched him mouth the words. It was like my whole hearing had gone. I'd gone into shock. And here I was being diagnosed with a condition that my mum had died from complications from. And I was 40 years old. And I wasn't meant to have it because we were told that we would never get it. And we were told that it wasn't hereditary and you're supposed to be between 20 and 40. And I was over 40 and here they were diagnosing me. So I then had the hard phone calls to make to ring Kelly, who was 1,400 kilometres north at the mine and couldn't get home, to ring him and tell him that I had it. Then I had to ring my grandparents and ring them. And my nana and I had been talking. She knew what was going on, but she hadn't shared it with my grandfather. And he answered the phone and, I was visibly upset sitting in the car. I hadn't got any further than the car. Flick had gone back to work. I was sitting in the car and I've said to him, I've got MS. And he goes, no, you don't. And I'm like, yeah, I do. No, they've got it wrong. You don't have that. And I'm like, so then I had to defend straight away. I'm sorry, Pa, yeah, I do. Nan knows what's been going on. This is what I've got. He goes, well, get your grandmother, and just handed it over. So I knew that he was visibly upset from it as well, because they'd never recovered from my mum's death.
Of course.
And then my nan went through a whole lot of guilt, thinking that it was her, that she'd given it to us because it was then we were genetically linked. But it also turns out that my cousin, my mum's first cousin, has it, and my grandma's cousin's great-granddaughter has it. And so it was all through, my nan's side of the family. But in no way did I ever think that it was my grandma's fault. It's just that we have shitty genetics. So then I had to go to work, and then tell them. So I had an afternoon shift from 1 to 9 to do, and I walked into work, and you can imagine how upset I was. You would have been upset when you were diagnosed as well, and then had to tell them that I had MS, and obviously, I wanted the night off. She told me to put my big girl panties on, go home, get changed, and come back to work.
Oh, my God.
And do an 8-hour shift. So anyway, there's my story of being diagnosed. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And it shapes you as a person. There's a process that we go through as well, like that sort of, for me, it was a little bit of denial. But when I was diagnosed, the day that I was diagnosed, I was relieved and I was okay with it. I actually went to the MS Society, the sort of, they used to be on Myers Street. So I actually went to that place and I went,
I remember that.
I don't know sort of why I'm here, but I just got diagnosed with MS. What do I do? And anyway, the lady was
wheelchair access into that building.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Yeah, which amazed me. Yeah.
I know the irony of it. But I went in there and we had a chat and she's like, so how do you feel about this? And I was like, I'm okay. I'm fine. Like, that was fine. Anyway, she ended up booking an appointment to see me 2 weeks later. And when I came in then, I bawled my eyes out. I was distraught because, I had the time to kind of think about how this was going to impact my life. I don't know if I mentioned I was in the second year of my PhD research. Mm-hmm. So I sort of had, being 23 years old, I was like, I've got my whole world ahead of me. I'm going to be a forensic scientist. And, it was...
I think really the shock wears off. When the shock wears off, that's when reality kind of hits. But when I went in, like when he said, it's MS, he did not apologise for calling it wrong for 3 months. never did he say that he was sorry about that. There was no compassion or anything in there. And, then I told him that, there were all these other symptoms. He's like, oh, well, I think we better put you in for some steroids. And we'll give you a lumbar puncture first. And we'll see what the lumbar puncture does first before we think about, giving you the steroids. And I'm like,
so that's usually done obviously to get the oligonucleotides from there to do a confirmation that it is MS, because if you've got those, I didn't have that, by the way, and some people don't. Some people don't have the lumbar puncture and still get a diagnosis, but other people, they're like, we won't call it MS until you get the lumbar puncture done. It's kind of a weird sort of system.
When I had the lumbar puncture done, I have low blood pressure at the best of times, and they did it at Hollywood Private Hospital in Perth, and I had the lumbar puncture, but there was nowhere to actually put me afterwards from having it done. And I can remember having the lumbar puncture done, and because you lay on your belly and they put anesthetic into that area of your spine, which hurts more than the actual lumbar puncture does. Then they have an X-ray machine over the top of you while they're doing it. And so as he's putting the needle in, the doctor says to me, trying to be humorous, I'll try not to hit your belly bar piercing. And I'm like, what? Thinking that this needle was going to be, I was quite fat too. This long to get through me to how far is he going into me? Anyway, he thought he was being humorous, not the best time to be humorous at all. But then from that, so they left me in a hallway, and there was a tradie changing the light bulbs, and I was watching this tradie thinking, oh, you're looking a bit blurry. The world's not looking too good. And my blood pressure had dropped to 80/50, and someone walked past me, a nurse walked past, because there was no one really checking on me, going, are you all right, love? And I'm like, and then all hell broke loose from that. But I'd spent 5 hours laying in that hallway from it.
What amazing bedside manner they had, obviously.
I know. Then they took me back to the ward, and then I had to wait, and that wait was the longest wait. And before they would start the steroids, I'm like, just start the bloody steroids now, because I knew with my mum back then, she used to do lots of oral steroids, and so when I was diagnosed, what instantly went through my mind was my mum's journey. So being quite naive into, oh my God, I'm going to end up like my mum, not realizing at the time, even though, I'd been living with it since I was 9 years old, that we all have MS, we all have similar symptoms, but we're all completely different, and our journeys are completely different. And so it took a little bit to get my head around that. What about you?
Yeah, look, I went through quite a big sort of transition, I suppose. That whole acceptance of this new thing that, I was now, or I had, and I think definitely I went through a few years of actually thinking that I could still do some of the stuff that I used to do. So, with my leg function being impaired, I used to think that I could still run, because I used to do athletics. I used to be a really fast runner, and all of a sudden,
I couldn't run before I got MS. I can't run now, but I couldn't run before I got MS, so I can't even use MS as an excuse for that. But maybe I've had MS a lot longer, and that's why I couldn't run.
Well, who knows? Yeah, but it's a transition. It is really a transition, because your brain remembers what you had before, like the abilities that you had before. Yeah. And so accepting that it was a really long period of time that I kept pushing the boundary.
You were telling me when we were on another Zoom call today, you were telling us about a basketball incident when you thought that you could. Do you want to share that one with the listeners?
I used to play basketball, and I used to love going for the fast breaks and stuff, because I obviously was a fast runner. And so, this match that we were in, my brain, I kind of didn't want to play at the start because I was like, "Look, I've got MS now, and I don't know how my body's going to be." The team convinced me because they're like, "We really need players, even if you just stand there." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll just do that." So I was standing there, and the problem is that my brain switched into, you're playing basketball, you know how this game works, run for the ball, go for the fast breaks, blah, 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 not thinking that there's another side that's going like, hang on, you remember how you got MS and you can't run anymore? Remember that? That didn't come into my brain. My brain just went, right, let's go into competitive mode and let's do this. So I started running for the ball. Now, needless to say, somebody else was running for the ball too, and their legs could stop. So they picked up the ball and stopped. My legs just kept going, and I was like, holy shit, I can't stop. And I just bashed into them, planted on the ground within 10 seconds of the game starting. It was embarrassing, but I was like, holy shit. Like my brain thinks I can still do this stuff. And my body's like, I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but that's just not.
Oh, girlfriend, no, you don't.
I know. And so it's really hard because it's like it's hardwired into your brain that you have these abilities and you can still do this, even though you kind of know there's a part of your brain that goes, yeah, no, you can't remember. Like, remember that you've got MS. So
Do you
that's
reckon
like
when someone has a limb cut off, they can still feel it?
Yeah.
It would be similar.
I reckon it is. It's like a muscle memory, like you remember your old life, like your previous abilities, and you think you can still do that. I suppose it's like aging, right? You know, you think that you can still do stuff when you're 60 that you used to be able to do when you were 20. Because
like getting off the floor.
That's right. Justine had a bit of a fall. What was it, last week?
Yeah, last week I hit the ground again. And you know, I'm not a small framed person. I know another MSer and she's about 47 kilos. So when she hits the floor, yeah, it hurts her, but it doesn't have so much of an impact because she doesn't have that extra body weight behind her. You hit the floor at 86 kilos. That, you know, I used to be 124.2 kilos. So I'm down to 86 again at the moment. Ideally, I'd like to be back around 80, but, you know, I'm working towards that.
Okay,
but, small steps. But that pounding down, and look, I landed on carpet. So what happened, listeners, was I was sitting on my bed and I'd been sitting there a little while and did not realise that my left leg had gone completely numb. Didn't realise at all. Couldn't feel it, but didn't realise that it was there. Wasn't there anymore, sorry. And I stood up to go to the toilet. Lucky I didn't pee myself. Stood up to go to the toilet and I just come crashing down and I hit the windowsill and the edge of my bed. So I don't have a huge gap through there. It's under 1 meter, and I just went down, screamed. Because I'd only recently, you know, in the last 3-4 months had, or 4 months, nearly 5 months now, had arm surgery, wrist surgery, and I was so worried I'd broken it again. I just sat there and sobbed, screamed. No one else in the house heard me. Had art classes going on in the other end of the house. No one heard me, and I'm like, well, there's no point ringing anyone. No one can do anything for me. They'll only want to try and get me off the ground straight away, and that's the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah.
Until my foot came back to life, that I could actually put some pressure on it without my foot going like this. I have done damage to it. It is clicking like you would not believe at the moment. So I'm probably doing a bit of the ostrich in the sand at the moment. It's like, it'll get better. There's not much pain to it, but now it's clicking. So
that's a bit of the coping mechanism that we all do, though, right? We kind of go into that, like, yeah, like, you know, we don't really have these symptoms or we don't really have this going on because it's easier just not to deal with it.
Yeah, that's right. Until it escalates.
Yeah.
Until it escalates and it's like, oh, I should have done something about that. You know, generally with me, with my MS, I don't know about you, but if I have a new symptom and it lasts more than 48 hours, right, so if it's something brand new that's happened to my body, then I make contact with the MS nurse.
Okay.
And then she'll either advise me to go to my GP or ring her back in another couple of days if it's still happening. And then she'll get me into my neuro, or my neuro normally calls me. He'll call me and say what's happening and just ask some questions. Whenever I get an infection in my body, and because I've had cancer and I've got no immune system at all anymore, I'm quite often will have some form of infection. So whether it's a UTI, whether it's a sinus infection or a chest infection or an ear infection, normally the infections I tend to get. If I get an infection, that will re-flare all my old symptoms. So if it's something new, that's when we monitor it. What about you?
Usually, like, I'm very in tune with my body these days because, as we know, you kind of have to be. And so I kind of will rate the severity of the symptom, and depending on what it is, but I reckon I probably am about the same in terms of the 48 hours. I'm probably watching it for 48 hours and looking to see whether it escalates. If it's gotten worse over 48 hours, then it's probably on the same trajectory, which means, because I've had 20 relapses in the past, so I'm very familiar with the feeling of, my body's not feeling right. But I basically, my neurologist is actually really good, and because I had so many relapses early on,
You have the same neurologist?
possibly, I don't want to say their name.
No, but what's his, is it a he or a she?
Hey, it's a he.
Does it start with C?
No.
We've got a different one then.
Yep.
We'll chat off air on who yours is. I think it'd be at the same place.
I know who yours is, but yes, it is at the same place, and they're both very good. But they're neurologists, right? But my neurologist, because I was seeing them so often, he actually gave me his phone number. So he's like, if you've got stuff going on, give me a ring or a text or whatever, and we'll sort something out. So quite often I have texted him saying, something ain't right. I can't walk again. Yep. And he'll actually, in the background, get my steroid treatment sorted out. And I usually get hospital in the home. So they actually the nurses will come out to my home and actually do the infusion of the steroids here. But yeah, it's not the luxury that everybody has. But fortunately, over the last few years, I haven't had to use it.
Got mine's email, so I can email him. And I don't abuse the privilege.
And that's important. I think that's really, really important, because when you abuse the privilege, then it's going to just ruin it, for not only yourself, but for everybody, I think, that has that sort of relationship. So, definitely keep an eye on your symptoms and stuff, though. And if something's going on, get it checked out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Elle, I think we might wrap it up now. This one's gone a little bit longer than what we'd anticipated, but that's fine. We really don't have too much of an agenda on these, do we?
No, we'll just keep it nice and organic, and we'll just chat and see where it lands, because, we'll be chatting about stuff that is relatable for people that are going through MS, whether it be a diagnosis like what we talked about today, or whether it be symptom management, or, how to actually improve things, or how we cope with stuff. It's going to be useful information for, somebody listening. Somebody listening will be like, oh my God, yes, I feel that too, which is exactly why we're doing this.
And if you are out there, listeners, and you've got a burning question for us, we're only too happy to discuss it each week. So these are going to drop every week. We'll probably record on a Friday and then drop it by the Monday, Tuesday on there. We'll see how we go with it all. But just email. We'll put an email link for you in the bio as well on the podcast. Just email it into us and we can discuss it in the upcoming episodes. And if you want us to mention your name, we can do that as well and give you a shout out. Or if you want to put it up, what's the word? I'm having a brain fart moment. What's the word? Anonymously. Yeah. All right. Yep. So I do lots of brain farts at the moment. I'm very fatigued, and my cognitive
welcome to the world of MS.
Some days are better than others and some are just shit.
Yeah, but we embrace the brain farts because, we need to accept that that's a real thing and that we all have them at times. So I'm sure that our listeners will completely understand and be forgiving of any brain farts that we have.
We both have one at the same time. We're going to be screwed in this. So if there's a long silent pause, listeners, you'll know that both Allyson and I are having brain fart moments at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but look, I just want to thank you all for tuning in today and listening to Allyson and I.
Thanks, everyone. Look, I hope you got something out of today. It was a pleasure to, just be able to share this with you in our episode 1 of MS Unmasked. It's been a pleasure.
It has. And until next time, everyone, stay healthy.